Welcome to JHart Modelworks. Join me for update number 2 on the Audi R8 from Revell. Welcome to my workbench. Let's get started. Hey guys, Justin here with JHart Modelworks. Another week has passed and it is time for another update on the Audi R8. We are making some headway. In this video, we're going to be focusing on getting all the running gear in place and getting the suspension set up so that we can go ahead and tackle the wheels. There are some complications there due to the fact that I am using some 3D printed wheels that don't exactly match up with the way the kit wheels were made. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this camera switched around so we can take a look at where we're at. Alright guys, here we are, and so far this is the progress of where we are at on the build. We do have the engine and the rear suspension in place. Everything is glued down properly. We have our drive shaft and our front differential in place. Got our shocks in there, and I thought this was going to be a lot more fiddly than what it was. Alright, so the upper control arm glues into this wheel well here, and it just kind of slides into place and then slides in and just it glues. Kind of hard to see, but it just kind of glues in. The bottom of the shock glues into the top of the upper control arm, and it glues in up there. Now the way to do this is you start with the bottom of the shock and you glue it to the top of the upper control arm and you let it get tacky. You don't really let it cure all the way because you want it wiggly enough that you can make sure that you get it in the right spot when you slide it in, but you want to make sure it's going to hold. You then slide the upper control arm into the wheel well, and in the process you make sure that you locate and you glue in the top of the shock, and it just kind of slides into place. Then once you have that assembled, you drop the wheel well. There's little marked areas for little tabs on the wheel well to go. You drop it into those, and you drop it right on top of the little pin on the top of the upright, and everything just kind of fits perfectly. So that's the rear suspension. And so now we can work on spacing. I've got the tire width down, and I've got the wheel width down, I believe. I've got a test print going right now, running one front wheel and tire, one rear wheel and tire, and the first set of prototypes for the spacers. We're going to see how this works out. I may have to make some adjustments. The spacers may not work at all. I know that they're going to fit because I've got kind of a prototype, but it doesn't quite work right. My initial prototype is like this. So that's going to sit on top of that D-shaped pin. And then there's a small opening there with a 2mm hole in it where the wheel's going to sit in. Now, the wheels that I had originally were spaced wrong and weren't the right size. They're way too thin. And this still sat way out too far. Everything's spaced wrong, so we made some changes to the wheels. But you see, that's way too wide. We'll see when this batch comes off the printer, but these take forever to print. So we're working on the front suspension. Now the kit instructions literally tell you to melt the tops of where the tie rod connects to the uprights. That's what that symbol means. I'd never seen that symbol before, so I went and looked, and it literally says melt. I was like, really? Because that's a real good way to warp your front suspension. I don't think that's what we want to do, honestly. They also tell you to melt the top of the upright over the upper control arm. Now, one, those pins aren't tall enough for that. Two, there's no way to get a heat source in there that isn't going to, in turn, melt your shock, your upper control arm. There's no melting this. That's absolutely stupid. Now, as for my solution to the top of the tie rod, I made these little donuts. I did mine on the 3D printer, but you could just as easily take like some 3mm plastic rod, drill like 1.5mm wide hole in it in the center, and just slide it down over the pin and glue it down. So you slide it down over the tie rod arm, and then you put your glue on the top up here so the glue never gets to the tie rod arm. And that allows this to remain swinging, but never come up off the upright. So I got one of those for each side. I'm going to keep working, and I'll come back with more updates. Alright guys, we are back, and we have made some headway here. As you can see, we have all of our running gears now in place. The front suspension in. Rear suspension is in. For the most part, the wheel tilt is still there. The shocks are sitting in there nicely. So that is done. And with that done, we can start tackling the issue with the wheels. These are the original kit wheels. They're not bad. They're nothing really to write home about. They do have this weird configuration though. So you have a front piece that slots into the tire. And you need to make sure that you slot it into the right part of the tire because the rear depth is different from the front depth. You then have a back piece, and you have your very one-sided brake disc. The brake disc goes in here, like this, and then that slots inside the tire. So what that does is the brake disc won't go any further this way because it pushes right up against the front of the wheel. It's not glued in place, so you can actually turn the wheel without turning the brake. Partially because you're going to glue it in right there with that little D-shaped pin. The D-shaped pin is going to fit right there. I have cut it down, but I will explain that to you later. So somewhere about like that. And it sits like that. What is that? They're not bad. They're just not quite what I'm wanting. Instead, I have 3D printed some Forgiato TEC 3.14s, which I think look pretty freaking cool. And I've wrapped them in some Yokohama Advan AO48s, which I think have a very cool tread pattern. Now, these are not rubber tires, they are hard resin, but being painted in Tamiya's tire black, they look really, really nice, in my opinion. There's some very, very clean molding. You can see the Yokohama branding and the AO48s. So these came out very nicely. Now, the original kit wheels, I believe, are 19s and just have a slightly bigger tire. I think they're the same on the face. They might be 19 and 20s. These may be slightly bigger, but I didn't think they were. Sorry about the crunching noise. Judith just got a bark box and she's enjoying her squeaky toys. Some of which make a crunchy noise as well as a squeak. So she's having fun over there. Unfortunately, she's being a little noisy. Back to the wheels. I printed a set of 19 and 20 rears. Scaled them so that they're pretty close in width on both the front and the backs. They are a bit smaller because this is a lower profile tire, but not by much. With that being said, these still sit about 3 to 5 millimeters outside the body, which look pretty bad and remind me of the TE37s that I put on the Accurate NSX, which I love the way that build came out paint-wise, The engine looks great, the interior looks great, but every time I look at that car, all I see are those wheels sticking out really bad. And that's because I added some aftermarket wheels. I also added some aftermarket photo etch brakes that were much wider than the kit brakes. The wheels were wider than the original kit wheels, and the way they're shaped, the kit wheels push the tire into the body, and the TE37s bend the other way and push it out. So I don't want another case of that where every time I look at the car, all I see are those wheels. So I did a lot of work on these. They actually come in a female fitment, which I flattened all the way in using Blender. I then added a 2mm post, kind of like a Tamiya wheel, but it's a very, very short post. Now, these are still here. Because if I were to just cut them flat and glue them on, I likely won't get them lined up, and I will end up with a car that wobbles and doesn't sit on all four wheels. So what I did was I 3D printed up an adapter. So we got the D shape on this side, so these are going to sit on those posts. There's a small little lip, and that small little lip is made perfectly to fit inside of our brakes. And then we have a small 2mm hole on this side, and that little hole is designed to sit right on our wheel hub. And it's just deep enough to go over that wheel hub. So I did several trial runs on these, several different printings. I did them at the original size of the original posts, and they still sat out way too far outside the body. We're talking the rear set out like that. Instead of being tucked in, they were like way out here. So between shaving off more of the inside, so I shaved off more of this inside and lowered it a little bit more to get it closer to the face. I also shaved off about 1mm or so, 1mm to 1.5 mm off of the D side. I shaved a little bit off of here so it was just flush right with the face of the brake disc. And I cut the mounting posts down by about half. For these wheels, I took for the rear wheels to get them wider because they only come in one size. They come as 19-inch. So that's no problem. You can scale it to 20 or 25, whatever you want. But if you scale these in your slicer for width, it's going to scale in the center, which means you're going to push out both directions, which means this becomes longer and sticks out more. So what I did was I took these into Blender, not the tires, just the wheels. And I grabbed just all the pick points for the outside edge, inside and out. I pulled them straight out this way so that it scaled only in one direction instead of from the center out. That way the wheel and the tire go inward instead of going both directions, and it'll tuck back inside a little better. And that right there is how our wheels will sit. Just barely tucked in, right where they should be. We will need to glue them in place. So they're not going to spin, but that's okay because I'm not a rolling wheels kind of guy. As you can see, they're going to tuck. It's kind of hard because the body doesn't quite sit perfectly, but they should tuck right in just like that. So that is how we've solved the wheel and tire situation. As far as the brakes themselves go, I had a bit of a struggle on what color to go with. At one point, I originally planned to go with gold. Then I realized that's going to disappear inside the wheels. I thought about silver, but that's going to disappear inside here. Gunmetal vanished. I went at one point to yellow, which I thought would clash badly with the wheels. Black, which disappeared even worse than the gunmetal did. I eventually settled for a red, which I don't think should be too bad looking. I think that should be okay. So that takes care of the engine, the running gear, all of our suspension. Our wheels are set. The geometry should be good for the wheels. We have also made some progress on the interior. Everything is in its initial colors for paint. There's still a bit of detail work to be done. I went with a saddle tan from MCW. This is their medium saddle tan. They have a dark one as well. I've decided I'm not going to flock this car. They have kind of some rubberized mats in here, which have some fairly nice detail. You're not really going to see them much anyhow, so I just went ahead and left those black. The seats are going to cover all of this, so you're not going to see this at all. So I didn't really feel that flocking was going to be of value. Our door cards have also made some progress. There are some decals or maybe some photo etch that needs to be done, a little bit more detail work before we can wrap these up. But I think those are going to look nice, especially if we toss in one of these Recaro seats in here for a look. So we just have a nice brown interior with some black accents, just a little bit of gold here and there for some accent as well. That looks good. But like I said, most of the interior parts have their first color on them. This one is actually just about done. It needs some decals on it and maybe a little bit more of the gold detail work in here. But for this, I used Mr. Hobby Super Metallic Super Rich Gold straight out of the pot. If you don't thin it for airbrushing, you can actually brush paint with this stuff fairly nicely. This is part of that KA photo etch set. I cut the defrost vents out and glued this photo etch in place. And at that point, I realized that I was not going to be doing the rest of those vents like that because that was just more work than it was worth. I probably could have sanded them and just glued the photo etch down, but that really kind of seemed like a lot of effort for not a whole lot more detail than what's already there. These are already really pretty nice. I did go ahead and two-tone this as well. And got ourselves a nice little brown down here. Probably won't see it, but that's okay. All right, so the only other really thing to cover in this video is going to be the rear end. Now, I mentioned in the last video that when I did the prep on this, I was rushing myself and not paying enough attention, and I didn't fill these rear holes for the European plate holder. The kit only comes with European license plates. I don't want to use European license plates. I like US plates. I like to build Texas plates with real Texas plate designs for my models. So they're not going to fit. They're not going to cover those holes. But I did have a solution. Once again, I've gone and 3D modeled a plate holder that should hold my plate, and it should look like it's got the lights that some cars have around the plates to light up the plate. So it's got some silver in there. There's a little recess in there, and so an actual plate should just sit right in there. So that should sit just like that and have our little plate mount. On the back, I have a couple of posts. And those posts line up perfectly with the holes. So let's be able to pop a little bit of glue in there, glue those down into place. You not even need to glue them because it friction fits really well. And voila. We're going to go ahead and get back to work on the Audi, and we're going to try and get the interior knocked out so that we can move closer towards getting this thing finished up. Not sure how much I'm going to get done this week, though. I have kind of a busy weekend. This Saturday in Denton, there's a one-to-one car show called Pistons and Paint. It is a car show for, like I said, one-to-one cars, 1972 and earlier. Should be a really awesome car show. They also have a model contest in there. And some of the guys that I know from Plastic Society DFW said, hey, we're judging at this thing. We'd really like to see some of your builds there. So I'm going to be going out there and showing some of my work. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's going to be in Denton. I'll put a link in the description below for where it's at. But I know this is probably going to come out on Saturday, so it's probably going to be too late. And most of you guys don't live near me, but that's okay. That's all for now. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate you watching my videos, and I will catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Also, feel free to leave comments, feedback, critique, or anything else in the comment section below. I enjoy interacting with all my viewers in the comment section and try to reply to all the comments I receive. If you want to catch future videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and make sure you click the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. As always, thank you for watching, keep modeling, and have a great day.